Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. After 24 years at the college, I am retiring. My sell-by date has been reached. My guest today is also retired from Murray State University, though, after 33 years teaching there. He's Charles Daughaday, my fellow Graves County and fellow Mayfield High School graduate, and we thought it would be interesting just to discuss the state of higher education as we see it today. As a matter of fact, it has moved Charles to poetry. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Barry.
Let's just start off and give us some of your verses, your musings on higher education.
All right. I'd like to start with just a few reminiscences about Brother Wendell Berry, who said something about poetry to sort of lay the groundwork. He talks about, in a very interesting little article called The Responsibilities of the Poet, and he says a poem lives at the center of a complex reminding, and certainly that's one of the values of studying and reading and doing poetry. He says it's connected with song and with play. It is part of the meeting of the personal with the larger world. So it's very important in that sense. He says that it connects the living and the dead, and it reminds people of what ought to be remembered. And certainly as a teacher of history, you know how easy it is to forget the past. He finally concludes by saying that it is a kind of convocation, and I really love that word. When you meet and there is something holy perhaps even about it, but certainly something very human, very spiritual about it. So that's why I write poetry, to try to do some of those things, and I'm sure some of them fail miserably, but hopefully every now and then one succeeds. And I've been concerned, as you have, and we who have labored in the classroom for long years.
Toiled in the vineyards.
Toiled in the vineyards, all right. And we may not be getting wine, but rather a little vinegar these days. But we're very concerned. I think anybody who has had very much experience in teaching is very concerned about the rapid changes that are taking place in education. And it can be generally stated, I think, that what has been public education is rapidly changing into private education, as is so much of our life. All the talk with the 99% movement was about retaking public places that had been privatized, either by the police or by the mayor or by some force. And now we find it happening with the shift from traditional classrooms to online teaching. To my mind, all of this is an effort to take the human being out of the equation. It's a sort of Facebook exercise in education.
I've often said to students, I can't imagine 20 years from now you saying, wow, I had a great computer for a history class.
That's very
and the thing that I loved about teaching, and I know the thing you loved about teaching, is the contact with students,
exactly.
The face-to-face, one human being to another.
Right.
And you know, that trend has been going on for a long time. There's a wonderful book that I would highly recommend to anyone. It's called Bowling Alone.
I love that
written
book.
Several years ago, about we don't do things in public anymore.
Right.
That you go home in the evening and you get on the computer and you send emails or you text message, but you might not know the family that lives 2 doors down.
That's right.
And this is the brave new world we're living in.
It is.
Anyway, continue on.
Yes, I've got 3 or 4 poems here as time will allow, but feel free to comment afterwards.
Go right ahead.
I've tried to give a
We'll do one and talk about it, do
Okay.
another and talk about it and so on.
I was very concerned about the fact that all this is associated in my mind, the privatization of everything, with management and control. And John Ralston Saul has written a marvelous book called Voltaire's Bastards. It was done back in the early 90s. And he's a Canadian writer, and it is a magnificent book. It's so loaded you just can't skim it. It's impossible. So rereading him not long ago, I decided I would pen this, and it's called We're Managing, Thanks. And it goes like this. Christianity's main focus lies in the story of the cross. More sermons and homilies are centered here because of the wish to return the human mind to its crooks, the death of the God-man in exchange for the salvation of future believers and followers. A most worthy occasion, but this momentous event lies not in a vacuum. An occupied country, enslavement of its peoples, acute oppression. Since the Roman genius was for organization, efficient management, a quantum leap in human life being ruled, imprisoned by rationalism. While the followers of Jesus wept and suffered, Pontius Pilate washed his hands, because that's what managers do. He would not be held accountable. The abandonment of even the pretense of morality is replaced by expediency. Here already we see the creation of a separate language freed of human concerns. Some 2 centuries later, management mentality has erased all human meaning, replacing real concerns with strategic thinking, managing talent, bridging gaps, managing resources, effective and influential communication, enhancing efficiency, creating and implementing God knows what. This is the language of death, of corporations, of the media, of all our utterances. But this language is hardly the language of David's songs and laments, or of my God, why hast thou forsaken me? There is now a total separation of languages in our confused times. A social language of the free market, a language of religion, often several, a language of politics. Polyglot rules the day, confusion shows the way. Those suffering remaining human, must stumble in the darkness, trying to uncover our fragmented, butchered, and lost memory. Put so soundly to sleep by the uncritical worship and drone of the digital. Driven like cattle to the free market, herded by a language of vitriol, hatred, uttered in the fetid breath of decay and death with the ancient devil's tongue. While little babies wave their chubby arms and legs and coo into their mothers' smiling faces. Most now oblivious that the world is without understanding. Given over to powers of darkness, wielders of power without self-knowledge. If we are no longer in this house together, we shall surely perish. Do not think this is harsh to see with the eye of the soul, which filters through the babble, the fear, the horrendous waste and paralysis, pushes away the enslavement and sees in every day and every breath Jesus still hanging on the cross, his followers crying, wringing their hands, the clouds forming, the lightning flashing, the thunder rolling, the catastrophic storms of our own making darkening the skies. Blood flows from his side. Tears of compassion drop from his luminous face. A great lament never heard before rises heavenward as Pontius Pilate washes his lily white hands. That's my contribution to management, and pretty much what I think about it.
Let's reflect just for a moment on your career at Murray State. You, of course, grew up in Mayfield.
Yes.
Graduated from Mayfield High School. Taught a little bit at East Tennessee State in Kingsport.
It's in Johnson City, the Tri-Cities area.
And then you came to Murray State.
Yes.
How, over the course of your career, how did the school change? How did students change?
You know, I have vivid memories of that, and it's very hard for me to put into words, Barry. I had such good teachers all through grade school, high school. Many of them were ladies, older ladies who had devoted their life to teaching. They cared and they taught you, and they're disciplinarians. And by the time I got to high school, my father had died, and we were 3 kids with my mother, you know, working. And I probably would never have gone to college. I didn't have any money. I was working at the time, but I remember Miss Florence Wyman calling me in and with her handkerchief in front of her mouth, you know, says, "Well, tell Charles, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and work, you know." And she said, "Oh, no. She said, I've arranged for you to have a small scholarship. You're going to college." And it was that kind of thing that you can't express it. It's a miracle, you know. And
Yeah.
from there on, I was able to go to school, and everybody cared. And I had basically good teachers in college, and it's such a formation. It's such an enrichment.
It is.
It's such a going beyond that, as I say, pleasures of the brain, pleasures of the imagination.
I had of course, I had Miss Florence in high school.
Sure.
But
right.
I confess, unlike you, I was not exactly a stellar student in high school. I spent quite a bit of time in the hall, having been thrown out of classes for misbehavior.
Really?
Oh, yes. And I had the grades to show it. I thought for years on the ACT I made a 5 in math. Actually, it was 15, which is, anyway. So I went to Murray State. All of my high school teachers were confident that I would flunk out the first semester. And I encountered a teacher who changed my life. His name was Roy Hatton, and you remember Roy.
I certainly do, with great respect.
He was the most amazing teacher I ever saw. First day of class, he comes in, class of about 60 students, and he says, "My name is Roy O. Hatton, this history 111 section, whatever it was. If you're not prepared to study 24 hours for my test, you'll fail, and I don't care." And I look, and he said, "If you're a graduating senior and have a 59.5 average, you'll fail because I don't care. If I catch you cheating this semester, I won't tell you. I'll just flunk you at the end because I don't care." Well, you have to understand, this is the fall of 1967, and if you flunk out, you have a government job waiting for you in Southeast Asia. And so I thought, well, okay, what have I done here? Next class starts, about 20 people have dropped. He looks out and he says, "Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. This class was too big." Well, the guy he wasn't a teacher, he was an inspirer, an orator.
And he changed your life.
He did. He wound up, and you know what was the funny thing about college? I discovered in college, and my son doesn't believe this, and that's okay, that learning was fun.
Yes.
I spent 4 years at Mayfield High School reading car magazines. I always enjoyed the class that had the large textbooks. I could hide a hot rod magazine behind it. I spent literally 4 years frittering away my time and had the grades to prove it. I was thankful that Kentucky at that time had a law that required a high school graduate to be accepted to a public university. Otherwise, I don't know what I wound up doing. But Roy, I took him for everything he taught at Murray State. He directed my master's thesis. He was a groomsman in our wedding. I dedicated one of my books to Roy, as well as to Marge. Marge, I love. Marge always laughed at my jokes, and I always appreciated that. But I hope that students, that every student, no matter where you go to school, has an inspiring teacher like that, because he made a difference.
Now my question to you would be, where are such people going to come from in the future for these students who present themselves today? Because you know, not long ago up in New York State, a man went online and published a letter he had written of resignation, saying that his profession no longer even exists.
Exactly, and if I had thought, I'd have brought that letter. He was a high school teacher, he was a history teacher.
Yes, he was.
And that letter has made a huge circulation, and it has resonated with people.
And I'd like to add one thing here. You know, we're not nearly concerned enough in this country for what's happening to the big issues like this, what's happening in education, because literally the future of our country depends on the citizenship being aware of this and caring and saying, look, enough already of this stupidity. We don't want to work everything being in the hands of corporations. And
again, and this is, you look at well, this society places money is the value, the
absolutely
yardstick.
Turned all the values.
And you look at how teachers are just not paid nearly as much as. And I don't care if you go on to become successful, whatever, a teacher taught you to do that. And this letter, we'll talk about the letter. Let's just talk about the letter.
Well, that the man wrote.
Yeah.
He had really, in his own personal experience, talked about the takeover of education, but also he touched on all the other things that had happened. I think the AAUP recently published to show that 80 to 90% of the people teaching in higher education in this country have no tenure, have very few perks. They're teaching as adjuncts. They can be fired tomorrow. They're not even making enough money to work at, it's about like McDonald's, only your setting is a little better. And why has this happened? It's happened because of all the political shenanigans, the so-called deficit and everything else. If the people can be made to believe that the deficit has to be addressed at the killing and numbing and almost beheading of our children, we are lost. And that's
well, the future. You look at public employees of any kind. You people used to say, well, if you go to work for the state government as a teacher, whatever, or the federal government as a letter carrier, whatever, the salary is not all that great, but you get great benefits. And now look what's happening to benefits.
The benefits have gone.
So how are you going to be able to attract quality people into higher education? And not only that, you mentioned adjuncts. You get someone who goes to Murray State or UK or wherever and gets a master's or a PhD, and where are they going to find a job?
They can't, and it's, they're disappearing. It's like everything else. Gradually, little by little, work has been taken away from us. I remember one of my teachers in the 4th grade said, "Work is man's greatest blessing." And I was too young to know what that meant, but I have since found out.
It's absolutely true.
It's definitely true.
But I tell that I've been advising students for 24 years, and I've never told a student what he or she should do as a career. But, and I've told students, I told my own son this, if your job doesn't have a high fun factor, if you don't enjoy doing what you're doing, and you can change jobs, you should. And it's so difficult convincing kids these days that money doesn't buy happiness.
It's the difference between training and a humanistic education.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's move on to another poem here.
I want to do a real quick one to change of pace so people won't think I'm living in a dungeon, okay? This is called "Old Wobbly." If love indeed really had 2 feet, it could glide from heartbeat to heart seat. If love really had angel wings, it would certainly fly and soar with hawks and eagles on high. But alas, love has 2 club feet, gets all entangles, often falls on its seat. Yet when summoned, wobbles along with a clump and a stump, facing such a twist that its grin looks like a rump. Still, love has a warmth and a great and very mysterious power, so that when it infects a being, it makes a lifetime seem but an hour. And so this is why time flies, not as the birds on high, nor as deftly and effortlessly as the clouds in the sky. And in the end, its ebullient warmth fills the untold cold graves of all its infectious invasions, whose earthly lives it eternally saves. That's my little encomium to love.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
All right. I have another one if you would like to hear it. This is a mathematician's. I'd like to save time for the one about the teacher, but let's do this one. This one is called "Eating Pie," and that's P-I.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The Greek letter. Math, a diameter's ratio to a circle's circumference, a never-ending series of numbers, hence transcendental. Highly suggestive. Mother Earth, planets, seasons, life cycles, all intricate concentric circles. But cut a straight line, a diameter through any and all circles, and some form of transcendentalism arises. Meaning what? The introduction of the linear, our earthly life, leading into an afterlife sustained by the myth of progress. A straight line interrupted by wars, violence, and evil of every kind, always ignored without a single bat of an eye. We live in circles, but always strive to go in a straight line, and celebrate our escape from confinement with all manner of incessant chatter and babble. Still living in caves, couldn't contain our knowledge. To so do would require finding our proper place in nature, abiding in it with satisfaction, peace, and harmony. Our dreams, always, what act, what force, intelligent power, vision, could create such incomprehensible beauty, such interdependence, stretching from the invisible minuteness to the unseen vastness, lying in the deep flecked twinkling of beyond space. A vastness and incomprehensibility so great that the supposed apex of creation mistakes the part for the whole, the line for the circle, putting the teeming fecundity of life, plant, animal, human, oceanic, all life in jeopardy. The complex mating humans try to clone, the mating that sustains all life, may seem transcendental, but its origins, like its impending destiny, are both unknown, like the conclusion of pi. We wish to rival the creation with our violence, speed, force, fortune-telling, and supposed power. We also wish to surpass the Creator by destroying the earth's dazzling and blinding and befuddling beauty. We do this through our frivolity, our egoism, our self-absorption, our self-aggrandizement, our spiritual passiveness, and our myth-making. Our insistence on making our spirits lie in the bed of make-believe. There are no straight lines on the arcs of circles. Bend, bend, bend. Bending is the only creative and sustaining way of life, which fits in harmony within the great confines of circles and reveals a great mystery, like pi.
I see Wendell Berry influencing this. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
He should go down as the great writer of our time, I'm convinced. You know, he's been nominated 6 or 7 times for the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Doesn't surprise me.
But they always send it to Bolivia somewhere. Yeah. But he is most deserving, if anybody is.
Yeah, he fascinating fellow. One of my colleagues, good friends on campus, David Nickel.
Oh yes.
David is a disciple of Wendell Berry,
well,
and I'll tell you a really funny Wendell Berry story. I guess this is telling tales out of school. Some years ago, we have got this automated phone system here. And the secret to it is when you call the school, when you hear "Welcome to West Kentucky," punch 0, and you'll cut through the message, the commercial message. So if you ever do that, of course, we also have a system now where it's direct dial into the offices, which is very handy. Well, we had this system, and Wendell Berry called for David, and David kept this phone message for years. And it was this obscenity-laced diatribe against this phone system, and I can't repeat what Wendell Berry said, but you could hear the slam, and it was the funniest thing you ever heard.
I bet it
and
was.
This, to me, that was a metaphor for Wendell Berry raging against technology.
Well said.
That's exactly what it was.
Right.
And his poetry. My wife did her master's at Murray on his works. But David's visited him up on his farm in Henry County. And did you have him for a teacher or know him? Were you around him much?
I knew him at the University of Kentucky. He was a full-time teacher there, and it was shortly thereafter, you may recall, he resigned and decided, bought his farm, and decided he would become a farmer. But he had such a sense of humor then, and even then you could tell he was different.
But I'll tell you something else too. Well, if you recall when the big controversy at UK when they built the Wildcat Coal Lodge.
Oh yes, he had all those
and
papers.
He phoned them up and said, "Remove my papers from your institution," and that was quite a blow. I mean, because Wendell Berry was an icon at the University of Kentucky for years. But I never met him. I always wanted to, but I sort of feel like I know him through David.
You do, and you just what you see in his writings. That's what he is. There is no.
I think my favorite work of his is The Long-Legged House, which we have in Old Copy. When Melinda was doing this master's thesis, I was reading along myself, but I really enjoyed The Long-Legged House, and we have an old copy of it, and it's underlined in many places. I did the underline. To me, a book is a tool. I underline in my books all through. Too. So, in the time we have left, we got one more poem you would like to.
Yeah, this one has to do with teaching. We can return us to our original subject here. I wrote this dedication afterwards, but I'll do it first. This is These lines are dedicated to all teachers who struggle to teach their students.
We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, you're fine.
That they might know an experience of human wholeness. So, give you some idea. This is called Teacher Soldier Pawn. Not long ago, when America had purpose other than empire, teaching of youth was considered a noble art without satire. Our youth was given the tools, the mind's gift of critical thinking, civic responsibility, maturation. The individual's flexibility of intelligence to control dangerous emotions, the virtue of being still and calm amid life's many unforeseen commotions. Such days have tragically passed. Myriad technologies ride mankind through our mythic, myopic belief in the power by machines, a sign of human misguided mastery without wisdom, blinded by power, wealth, forever spreading like wild propaganda seeds infecting national health. In our emotional hurry to an unknown future, we blindly jettison the past, separating our intelligence from our actions, which cannot last. Currently, there is no human horror not rationally erased by insincerity, so that ever more civic freedoms may be removed from its citizenry. Thus, teachers become armed soldiers, children schooled in weaponry. Most fall in line, more guns, less moral awareness, a creeping leprosy. The political doctors in Washington, all specialists in fear, tell us only physical violence can protect that which we hold dear. And so the teachers now become pawns of final metamorphosis of perversion. Rather than mold youth toward the human, an osmosis has occurred, a grotesque transformation into the same image of our empire, armed and dangerous, grinding the soul like so much sausage. Herein lies our genius of manipulation, turning our potential into deprivation.
Well put.
All
well
right.
put. Got 1 minute left. Any final thoughts?
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come very much.
Enjoyed the time before you were here.
Well, and I'm also saddened to see you leave because I know that how hard you've worked and what your contributions are. And I feel the camaraderie of all of us who have labored, in these vineyards, as you say, and I hope that that we're wrong about a lot of these things. And
well, I do too.
I really do. I'm not happy about it, but I appreciate it, and I certainly wish you the best. And I know you'll stay busy and creative.
I will. In fact, this program will carry on.
Well, wonderful.
We're going to soldier on with the program and my other program, the Union Label. And I'll be on campus from time to time. But I don't want to be like some old war horse or a fire horse that comes around and pesters people when they're trying to do work.
I understand.
Anyway, so. Well, thank you for coming.
Most welcome.
My guest today was Charles Daughaday. I'm Barry Craig. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.